third reading.
Call on Government Order of the Day number 5.
Television New Zealand Amendment Bill, third reading.
I call the Honourable Minister, Jonathan Coleman.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Television New Zealand Amendment Bill be now read a third time. Mr Speaker, the Government's pre-election manifesto included a commitment to provide certainty to our public broadcasters. To do this, we had to address the outmoded provisions in Television New Zealand's legislation and put in place a new mandate for its operations in the 21st century. This bill amends the Television New Zealand Act 2003 in line with this Government's wish to replace the current TVNZ Charter with a less prescriptive list of functions and to leave Television New Zealand to concentrate on being a successful television broadcaster without the shackle of an unrealistic dual mandate. The other core purpose of the bill, Mr Speaker, is to amend the Act to allow the rescreening of TVNZ's archived pre-1989 television programs and to provide a process for compensatory payments to individuals with an interest in the works when the archived programs are rescreened. This bill recognised Television New Zealand is now operating as a multimedia company delivering content to mainstream and niche audiences. The bill also future-proofs Television New Zealand's ability to use new media platforms on which to display content. The Government's expectations of Television New Zealand are set out in Part 1 of the bill, replacing a lengthy list of charter obligations as outlined in Section 12 of the Act. Tinkering with the Charter during a 2007-2008 review tightened up the wording, but did not address the central problem, that TVNZ cannot meet Section 12's requirements to give effect to its charter and to maintain its commercial performance. So the dual mandate had to go. This bill, Mr Speaker, provides a realistic framework within which TVNZ will operate. The reality is that for many, many years, Television New Zealand has been predominantly commercially funded. Well over 90% of its income is from commercial revenue, and that was the case under the last government as well. Members will be well aware that Television New Zealand's charter was not workable for a commercial broadcaster. As a result, there was not a real point of difference for Television New Zealand's programming, and charter funding was sometimes used in ways not intended when the charter was first enacted in 2003. Removing the charter as being honest and not trying to pretend that TVNZ is something it plainly is not. The real test is to look at what difference there is in Television New Zealand's viewing schedule prior to the charter as compared to during it. The answer is that there is none. Clause 6 of this bill therefore replaces the charter with a clear, achievable set of functions for Television New Zealand. These are to be a successful national television and digital media company, providing a range of content and services on a choice of delivery platforms and maintaining its commercial performance. To provide high-quality content that is relevant to and enjoyed and valued by New Zealand audiences. To encompass both New Zealand and international content and to reflect Maori perspectives. And to include the provision of channels that are free of charge and available to audiences throughout New Zealand. The bill gives Television New Zealand the flexibility it needs to set its own priorities and compete in a highly competitive and diverse media market without the encumbrance of an unrealistic charter. Television New Zealand's challenge is to deliver content New Zealanders want to see, or as the bill puts it, content that is enjoyed and valued by New Zealand audiences. TVNZ already delivers on that provision. Its programs dominate the ratings. New Zealanders clearly want to see New Zealand content, and this government is continuing to fund that content through New Zealand On Air. Our policy is to support the production of content rather than channels or platforms for delivery, because one broadcaster does not have a monopoly on good ideas. Rather than ring-fencing funding for Television New Zealand programs, we allow Television New Zealand to compete along with other broadcasters for New Zealand On Air funding, and thereby make sure that only the best projects make it to our screens. The Maori Party had concerns that with the removal of the Charter, Television New Zealand will not meet its obligation to promote Maori language and culture. They referred to the Privy Council findings in the 1993 New Zealand Maori Council case that the government has a legal obligation to promote Maori language and culture. This government, Mr Speaker, is very aware of its obligations. We support those initiatives which promote Maori language and culture, including the establishment of Te Mangai Pāho and the Maori television service. New Zealand On Air also has a specific statutory mandate to address Maori interests. The new functions in the bill also explicitly require Television New Zealand to provide high-quality content that reflects Maori perspectives. Mr. Speaker, the second part of this bill introduces a new scheme to free up publicly funded archive material in Television New Zealand's archive for rescreening. TVNZ's archive has an extensive collection of New Zealand audiovisual material, and it's an important part of New Zealand's cultural heritage, and it's in the public interest to make that available. Currently, a significant number of programs are effectively locked up in that archive, unable to be screened because of the multiple rights attached to the works which would require clearance. This bill provides a means to resolve the issue of rights clearance. The scheme balances public good objectives of making these works available for current and future generations to see with the rights of those who were contracted to work on those programs. The bill imposes certain conditions on the use of the archived material. Only material where Television New Zealand holds sole copyright will be screened. Co-productions cannot be included. Employees of the BCNZ or its predecessors will not be able to seek payment for rescreening of archived work. The material must be screened free of charge to the viewer on Television New Zealand channels, on the on-demand internet site, or on any other platform that TVNZ chooses. The material must be screened outside prime time hours on TVNZ's main commercial channels and must not be subject to a licence sold for profit by TVNZ, though the recovery of reasonable costs will be permitted. The Maori television service currently has arrangements with TVNZ regarding the use of material held in the archive. I am aware how invaluable this material has been for Maori television. Clause 20C of the bill permits Television New Zealand to make archived works covered by the scheme available to the Maori television service. It does not in any way supersede the existing arrangements between TVNZ and Maori television around wider access to material in the TVNZ archive. Similarly, TVNZ will be able to enter into an arrangement with New Zealand On Screen in respect of a work previously screened by TVNZ or Maori television. And I know, of course, Mr. Speaker, that the opposition has made a number of statements around broadcasting, whereas we've laid out very clearly our view, clearly and unambiguously, that we're going to fund programs, not bureaucracies. Right. Labor has made a number of undertakings in the past few days, and yet, yes, only yesterday was calling for a public service television channel. And I'm looking forward tonight, Mr. Speaker, to the Labor speakers confirming that indeed, should they become the government, they will be finding at least $15 million per annum to fund that channel. Mr. Speaker, as Minister of Broadcasting, it's great to see this legislation passed. It ushers in a new era for TVNZ and allows our state broadcaster to operate effectively in today's fast-moving media environment. This bill removes the confusing and conflicting goals which have hampered Television New Zealand in recent years. It sets the company on a new course with a clear direction for its operations and a mandate to provide added value for publicly funded works. It's a very positive development for Television New Zealand. Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the